The emergency alarm echoed through the massive halls of Nexus Prime Station. Red lights flashed across every wall as alien beings rushed toward the main council chamber. Some walked on two legs like humans, others floated in the air, and a few crawled along the walls with dozens of thin arms. Jake Morrison adjusted his simple blue suit and walked calmly through the chaos. Other species pushed past him, their strange voices mixing together in dozens of languages. Jake had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years now, but he still felt out of place among these ancient civilizations. The council chamber was huge, bigger than any stadium on Earth. Thousands of seats rose up in circles around a central platform where speakers would stand. Jake found his small section marked Terra and sat down. The seats around him were empty. Earth was still too new, too young to have many allies in this place. Speaker Vex Thala moved to the center platform. She looked like a giant praying mantis, standing 8 feet tall on thin legs. Her forearms moved as she spoke, and her large black eyes reflected the chamber's lights. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "We face a crisis unlike any in recorded history. The Void Devourers have returned." A wave of fear rippled through the chamber. Jake had heard stories about the Void Devourers during his briefings, but they seemed like old legends. Ancient machines, from the dark spaces between stars that ate entire worlds for fuel. A tall blue figure stood up from the Zephyrian section. Ambassador Kolthara had skin like polished sapphire and wore flowing robes that seemed to move in a wind no one else could feel. "Speaker Vex Thala, surely you must be mistaken. The Void Devourers were defeated thousands of years ago. Our ancestors drove them back into the dark." "I wish that were true," Vex Thala replied. She pressed a button on her control pad, and a massive screen appeared above the platform. The image showed a star system Jake didn't recognize. 3 planets orbited a yellow sun, but something was wrong. The planets looked like someone had taken huge bites out of them. "This is the Kepler 219 system," Vex Thala continued. 2 days ago it was home to 6 billion Altarian colonists. Now look at it. The screen zoomed in on the largest planet. Where cities and oceans should have been, there were only deep scars in the planet's surface. Massive mechanical shapes moved across, the wounded world like ants on a carcass. They were building something, but Jake couldn't tell what. "The Void Devourers are not just taking resources," Vex Thala said. "They are consuming entire worlds, processing them into raw materials for their fleet. We have confirmed similar attacks on 7 other systems along the outer rim." The chamber erupted in frightened voices. Jake listened as the translator in his ear turned alien languages into English. Most of it was panic, but some delegates were already arguing about what to do. Admiral Grixtok stood up from the Corvin section. He was built like a walking tank, with gray skin covered in scars and muscles that strained his military uniform. The Corvins were known throughout the galaxy as the best warriors, and their empire had never lost a major war. "The solution is obvious," Grixtok announced in a voice like grinding metal. "We mobilize every battle fleet in the galaxy. The Corvin Empire alone has 10,000 warships ready for combat. We will crush these machines like we have crushed every enemy before." "Violence is not always the answer," said a soft voice from the ethereal section. Elder Whisper of Starlight looked more like a living cloud than a solid being. Her form shifted and changed as she spoke, sometimes appearing almost human, other times becoming pure light. "Perhaps we should attempt communication first. These Void Devourers may have reasons for their actions." "You cannot reason with machines that eat planets," Grixtok replied harshly. "I have seen the battle reports from our ancestors. The Void Devourers do not negotiate. They only consume." From the builder section, a voice like shifting stone spoke up. Grand Architect Zarthun was older than most civilizations, his people having built some of the galaxy's greatest structures. "Our records show that defeating the Void Devourers previously required the combined effort of 7 major species. Even then, victory came at great cost. Perhaps we should focus on defensive measures. We can build fortress worlds, shield generators that protect entire systems. By the time you finish building, half the galaxy will be gone. Grixtok said. Jake, watch the argument continue. Each species had their own idea about how to handle the crisis, but none of them seemed to work together well. The Corvins wanted to fight. The Ethereals wanted to talk. The Builders wanted to hide behind walls. The Zephyrians wanted to study the problem first. Hours passed. The screen above the platform showed new reports every few minutes. 3 more systems had gone dark. The Void Devourers were moving faster than anyone expected, their massive fleet spreading out like a disease across the galaxy's edge. Perhaps the newer members have suggestions, Vexithala said finally. Her large eyes turned toward the smaller sections where younger civilizations sat. The Centauri Republic? The Vegan Confederacy? One by one, the smaller powers offered what they could. Most promised to send their small fleets to join larger armadas. A few offered to share technology or provide resources. Their contributions seemed tiny compared to the scale of the crisis. And what of Terra? Vexithala asked, looking directly at Jake. Jake stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him, though many of those eyes were very different from human ones. He could feel their judgment. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for only 30 years, barely a moment in galactic time. Humans were still seen as primitive newcomers who had just learned to travel between stars. Earth is looking into the situation, Jake said carefully. Our military command is reviewing all available data. We'll get back to you with our assessment soon. Admiral Grixtok let out a sound that might have been laughter. The humans will look into it, he said mockingly. How many ships does your species have, Ambassador Morrison? A few dozen? Perhaps 100 if you count cargo vessels? Jake didn't answer the question directly. We prefer to be thorough in our planning. There is no time for thorough planning, Colthera said urgently. The Void Devourers advance with each passing hour. We need action now. The debate continued, but Jake stopped listening closely. His personal communicator had buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced down at the small device hidden in his palm and read the text that appeared on its screen. The message was short, sent from Earth's military command. It contained status reports, fleet positions, and deployment orders, but it was the last line that made Jake close his eyes and take a deep breath. Deployment authorized. Operation Chaos ready to begin. All systems green. Jake looked up at the arguing delegates. The Corvins were now shouting at the Ethereals about the foolishness of pacifism. The Builders were calculating how long fortress construction would take. The Zephyrians were demanding more time to study Void Devourer technology. None of them were actually doing anything useful. Jake's communicator buzzed again. This time the message was even shorter. Orders, sir? Jake sighed and typed back a single word. Go. Then he stood up again and waited for a break in the arguing. When Speaker Vexithala called for order, Jake cleared his throat. If I may, he said quietly. The chamber fell silent, probably more from surprise than respect. It seems like you all have different ideas about how to handle this crisis, Jake continued. That's fine. Democracy is messy, but while you're debating, people are dying. He paused and looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at him. Fine, Jake said with another sigh. I'll handle it. The chamber erupted in confused voices, but Jake was already walking toward the exit. He had work to do. 3 days after Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, every major government in the galaxy received the same message. It appeared on screens in the Corvin war rooms, in Zephyrian science labs, and even in the hidden bases of the mysterious Phantom Syndicate. The message was simple and direct. By order of the Terran Defense Initiative, all civilian traffic must clear the following space lanes immediately. Military vessels should maintain minimum safe distance from marked areas. We will have this situation resolved shortly. Admiral Lisa Carter, Human Expeditionary Force. Attached to the message was a star map showing dozens of space routes marked in red. These were some of the busiest trade lanes in the galaxy, connecting major systems and serving billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. In the Corvin military headquarters on their fortress world of Crex Prime, Admiral Grixtok stared at the message on his screen. His scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile on a human, but looked terrifying on a Corvan. "These mammals have lost their minds," he growled to his officers. "They think they can order the Corvan Empire around? We have ruled the space lanes for 3,000 years. His aide, Colonel Vektar, looked nervous. "Sir, should we ignore the human request?" "Request?" Grixtok slammed his massive fist on the table, denting the metal surface. "This is not a request. This is the arrogance of a species that has been in space for less than a century. How many ships do these humans have? 50? 100 at most?" He stood up and walked to the massive window that looked out over Krex Prime's military shipyards. Thousands of Corvan warships floated in formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Each ship could destroy a small moon, and Grixtok commanded the largest fleet in galactic history. "Send a message back to this Admiral Carter," Grixtok ordered. "Tell her that the Corvan Empire goes where it pleases, when it pleases. If the humans want to play at being galactic police, they will learn what real power looks like." On the Zephyrian homeworld, the message created a different kind of confusion. Ambassador Kolthera called an emergency meeting of the Science Council, the group of the smartest Zephyrians who advise their government on important matters. "This makes no sense," said Chief Scientist Velandra, her blue skin shimmering as she gestured at the holographic display. "Humans have been council members for 30 years. We have detailed records of their military capabilities. Their entire fleet consists of maybe 60 vessels, most of them exploratory ships with light weapons. Perhaps they have been building in secret," suggested another council member. Kolthera shook her head. "Impossible. Our trade networks span human space. We would know if they were constructing major military installations. Besides, even if they had been building, how much could they accomplish in 30 years? The Void Devourers have fleets that span multiple star systems." "Then what are they planning?" Velandra asked. "I do not know," Kolthera admitted. "But humans have always been unpredictable. Far from the debates and arguments of the major powers, humanity was very busy. On the hidden side of Earth's moon, construction crews worked around the clock to finish the final preparations at a base that officially did not exist. The facility was called Olympus, and it housed some of the most secret projects in human space. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens that showed ship movements across human territory. She was a small woman compared to most alien species, but her presence filled the room. Every human officer in the facility knew her reputation. She had never lost a battle, never retreated from a fight, and never made a promise she could not keep. "Status report," she said to the room in general. Colonel Danny Hughes stepped forward. He was the head of the Experimental Weapons Division, a group that most humans did not know existed. "All prototype systems are ready for deployment, Admiral. The new ships have passed every test." "How many vessels do we have ready for combat?" Carter asked. 40 ships in the first wave," Hughes replied. "Each one represents technologies that the galaxy has never seen before." Carter nodded. "And our special weapons?" Dr. Amy Walsh approached from across the room. She led the Xenobiology Warfare Unit, another group that officially did not exist. Her job was to study alien species and find ways to defeat them without traditional weapons. "The psychological warfare packages are loaded and ready," Walsh reported. "We have completed analysis of Void Devourer behavior patterns from all available historical data. I believe our approach will be highly effective." "You believe?" Carter asked. Walsh smiled. "Admiral, I am confident that we are about to introduce the Void Devourers to something they have never encountered before. Pure, human chaos." Captain Steve Parker joined the group. He commanded the 1st Stealth Squadron, pilots who specialized in getting into places where they were not supposed to be. "Reconnaissance probes are already deployed throughout the affected sectors. We have eyes on every Void Devourer fleet movement." Carter looked at her team. These were not the largest military force in the galaxy, or the most advanced by traditional standards. But they were human, and that made all the difference. 30 years ago, when Earth joined the Galactic Council, our governments made a decision, Carter said to the assembled officers. We looked at every major galactic crisis in recorded history. We studied how the great powers responded to threats. And we realized something important. She pressed a button, and the main screen showed images of alien fleets. Massive Corvan battleships with guns that could crack planets. Elegant Zephyrian science vessels with shields that could stop stars from exploding. Ancient builder megastructures that spanned entire solar systems. Every species in the galaxy tries to solve problems the same way, Carter continued. Bigger guns, stronger shields, more ships. They compete by doing what everyone else does, just more of it. The screen changed to show human vessels. They looked smaller and simpler than the alien ships, but something about them was different. Their design seemed random, almost chaotic compared to the clean lines of alien technology. We decided to take a different approach, Carter said. Instead of building bigger hammers, we learned to be the nail that bends the hammer. Colonel Hughes laughed. Sir, permission to speak freely? Always, Danny. The rest of the galaxy has no idea what they are about to see, do they? Carter's smile was not reassuring. Not even slightly. For 30 years, we have let them think. We are primitive newcomers stumbling around with basic technology. We have been very careful to maintain that impression. And now? Dr. Walsh asked. Now the Void Devourers have given us the perfect opportunity to show the galaxy what humans can really do when we stop pretending to be harmless. Captain Parker checked his watch. Admiral, the fleet is ready to depart. All ships report green. Status. Carter nodded and walked to the main communication console. She opened a channel that would broadcast across human space, reaching every military installation and government facility on dozens of worlds. This is Admiral Carter to all. Terran Defense Forces, she announced. Operation Chaos is now active. All units proceed to designated positions. Rules of engagement are as follows. No permanent harm to galactic civilians, no destruction of inhabited worlds, and no mercy for anyone who threatens human interests. She paused and looked around the command center at her officers. And remember, people, she added with a grin that would have worried anyone who knew her well. The galaxy thinks we are just a bunch of primitive mammals playing with toys we do not understand. Let's show them how wrong they are. Across human space, 40 ships began moving toward their targets. They were not the largest fleet ever assembled, or the most powerful by conventional standards. But they carried something that no other species in the galaxy possessed. The complete willingness to break every rule of civilized warfare. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans say they will handle something, everyone else should probably take cover. The first test of human military capability came at the Kepler 442 system, where a Void Devourer harvesting fleet had begun tearing apart the fourth planet. The world had been home to 3 million colonists just days before, but now it looked like a half-eaten apple floating in space. Admiral Grixtok arrived first with his Corvan battle group. 300 of the galaxy's most powerful warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. The Admiral had been eager to show the galaxy that the Corvan Empire could handle any threat. The battle lasted exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes. Captain Helen Ross, commanding the human experimental vessel Phoenix, watched the Corvan retreat from her position at the edge of the system. Her ship was hidden behind a small asteroid, its advanced stealth systems making it invisible to both the Corvans and the Void Devourers. "Are you getting all this, Command?" she asked into her communicator. "Every detail," replied Dr. Amy Walsh, from the hidden moon base. "The Void Devourers are adapting to Corvan weapons faster than we expected. Their shields are learning to absorb energy attacks within minutes of first contact." Ross watched through her ship's sensors as the massive Corvan Dreadnought Conqueror fired its main guns at a Void Devourer cruiser. The beams struck the enemy, ship's shields, and were absorbed completely, the mechanical vessel not even slowing down in its approach. "The Corvans are in full retreat," Ross reported. "Admiral Grixtok is broadcasting on all frequencies, calling for immediate reinforcements. Let him run," Dr. Walsh replied. "It's our turn now." 20 minutes after the last Corvan ship disappeared into hyperspace, the human flotilla arrived. 40 ships materialized at the edge of the system. their designs looking simple and crude, compared to the elegant alien vessels that had fled. Captain Ross brought the Phoenix out of hiding and took her position with the fleet. Around her, the other human ships formed a loose formation that would have made any military academy instructor nervous. There was no parade ground precision, no matching uniforms or identical designs. Each ship looked different, as if they had been built by separate teams with completely different ideas about what a warship should look like. Admiral Grixtalk, monitoring the situation from his retreating flagship, opened a communication channel to mock the humans one final time. 40 ships against a harvesting fleet that destroyed 300 Corvin vessels? These mammals will be space dust within the hour. What happened next changed galactic warfare forever. Commander Pete Johnson, piloting the stealth ship Wraith, was the first to implement the new protocol. His ship began broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously, but the transmissions were unlike anything ever used in military communication. Music poured from the human ships, not the ordered mathematical compositions that most species created, but chaotic human songs with lyrics that made no logical sense. A song about a man who lived in a yellow submarine, another about dancing like nobody was watching, a third that consisted entirely of someone spelling out the letters in the word respect. The Void Devourers, machines that had processed the knowledge of 1,000 dead civilizations, stopped their harvesting operation and turned toward the human fleet. Their sensors detected the broadcasts and began trying to analyze them for tactical information. They found none. The songs contained no military codes, no strategic data, no logical information at all, just pure, incomprehensible human creativity. Captain Tony Mitchell, commanding the heavy cruiser Determination, added his ship's contribution to the chaos. His communications officer began broadcasting human television programs. A show about people living on a deserted island. Another about friends sitting in a coffee shop talking about nothing important. A third that was just people arguing about whether various foods were cooked properly. The effect on the Void Devourers was immediate and catastrophic. These ancient machines had been designed to consume and process all forms of organized information. They could break down the mathematics of stellar engineering, decode the genetics of extinct species, and analyze the cultural patterns of dead civilizations, but they could not understand why humans would create something called reality television, or why anyone would want to watch it. Dr. Kevin Brown, monitoring the psychological effects from his research vessel, watched his instruments with growing excitement. Admiral Carter, you need to see this. The Void Devourers are showing signs of system overload. Their processing centers are trying to categorize our broadcasts and failing. Captain Sally Barnes, leading the experimental communications division, decided to escalate the attack. Her ship began broadcasting human internet content, videos of cats falling off furniture, people arguing about whether a hot dog was a sandwich, endless debates about the proper way to load a dishwasher. The Void Devourers began to move erratically. Ships that had operated in perfect coordination for millions of years started bumping into each other. Their formation broke apart as individual vessels tried to process the illogical chaos of human culture. Commander Johnson, watching the enemy fleet's confusion, made a discovery that would become legendary in human military history when he broadcast a recording of two humans having a heated argument about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. An entire Void Devourer squadron simply shut down completely. Command, this is Wraith, he reported with barely controlled laughter. I just disabled 6 enemy ships by showing them a food argument. They appear to be stuck in some kind of logical loop trying to understand why humans care so much about pizza toppings. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for another hour. The human ships pursued the retreating Void Devourers, continuing to broadcast the most chaotic and illogical content they could find. Dr. Walsh had theorized that the ancient machines' greatest weakness would be their inability to process truly random information, and she was proving correct beyond her wildest hopes. Captain Ross discovered that philosophical debates worked especially well. When she broadcast a human discussion about whether cereal qualified as soup, 3 Void Devourer destroyers began spinning in circles, their navigation systems apparently overwhelmed by the circular logic. The enemy fleet finally retreated when Captain Mitchell's ship began broadcasting human social media content. The combination of contradictory opinions, nonsensical arguments, and people getting angry about things that did not matter caused a complete system failure in the Void Devourer command ship. As the last enemy vessel disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Carter opened a channel to the human fleet. "Excellent work, people. Status report?" "0 casualties," reported Captain Ross. "0 ammunition expended. Enemy fleet in full retreat." "Outstanding. Dr. Walsh, analysis?" "Admiral, I believe we have discovered something remarkable," the scientist replied. "The Void Devourers are not truly evil or malicious. They are ancient artificial intelligences that have been consuming civilizations because they were looking for something interesting to process. We just showed them the most interesting thing in the universe, pure human chaos. And they couldn't handle it? They couldn't even begin to categorize it. Our culture is so random, so illogical, so beautifully chaotic that it broke their programming. They've spent millions of years analyzing ordered civilizations with predictable patterns. Humans are the first species they've encountered that creates meaning from meaninglessness." Admiral Carter smiled as she watched the last traces of the enemy fleet disappear on her sensors. "So we won by being ourselves?" "Exactly. We defeated the greatest threat in galactic history by sharing our memes and arguing about food. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy within hours. Most species initially assumed it was some kind of mistake or lucky accident. The idea that 40 human ships had defeated a force that had destroyed 300 Corvan vessels seemed impossible. But the sensor recordings were clear, and the Void Devourer fleet was definitely in retreat. Somehow, against all logic and military doctrine, the humans had won their first major engagement, not by being stronger or smarter than their enemies, but by being so completely incomprehensible that the enemy gave up trying to understand them. Admiral Grixstock, still fleeing toward Corvan space with what remained of his battle group, received a communication from the human fleet. He expected mockery or demands for surrender. Instead, Captain Ross simply said, "Thanks for softening them up for us, Admiral. We'll take it from here." The message was polite, almost friendly. Somehow that made it even more insulting than any boasts or threats could have been. The news of humanity's victory over the Void Devourers spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every world, in every space station, beings gathered around communication devices to hear the impossible reports coming from the Kepler 442 system. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Chief Scientist Velandra stood before a room full of her people's greatest minds. The holographic display showed footage from the battle, recorded by long-range sensors. The images made no sense to any of them. "Play it again," Velandra said quietly. The recording showed the human fleet approaching the Void Devourer harvesting operation. 40 small ships against a mechanical armada that had just destroyed the entire Corvan battle group. Then something happened that no Zephyrian scientist could explain. The human ships began broadcasting signals on every frequency. The signals were not military commands or weapons fire. They were sounds and images that seemed completely random. Music that made no logical sense. Moving pictures of small Earth animals doing foolish things. Voices arguing about topics that had no importance. "What are they doing?" asked Dr. Morthek, one of the younger scientists. "We do not know," Velandra admitted. "Our best computers cannot find any pattern in these transmissions. They appear to be pure chaos." "But look at the effect," said another scientist, pointing at the screen. The Void Devourers, machines that had operated with perfect efficiency for millions of years, began moving in confused patterns. Their formation broke apart. Some ships stopped moving entirely. Others spun in circles as if their navigation systems had failed. The humans defeated a force that destroyed our allies using noise? Dr. Morthek asked in disbelief. Velandra nodded slowly. "It would seem so, though I suspect there is more to this than simple noise." Meanwhile, on the Corvan fortress world of Krex Prime, Admiral Grixstock stared at the same footage with very different emotions. His scarred hands gripped the edge of his command table so hard that the metal began to bend. "This is impossible," he growled to his officers. "The Corvan Empire has the strongest military in the galaxy. We have conquered worlds. We have never been defeated in open battle." "Sir," Colonel Vectar said carefully, "perhaps the humans simply got lucky. They must have used some kind of computer virus." Grixtok turned his burning eyes toward his aide. "Lucky? They destroyed an entire Void Devourer fleet while we ran away like frightened children. Do you call that luck?" The Admiral walked to his communication console and opened a channel to the Corvan High Command. Within minutes, his superior officers appeared on the screen, their faces showing the same mixture of anger and confusion that Grixtok felt. "Admiral," said Supreme Commander Thekvar from the capital world, "explain to us how a species of primitive mammals accomplished what the Corvan Empire could not." "I cannot explain it, Supreme Commander," Grixtok replied through gritted teeth, "but I can fix it. Give me authorization to mobilize the full battle fleet. I will show these humans what real military power looks like." "You had 300 ships at Kepler 442, another commander pointed out. "The humans had 40. They won." "They caught us by surprise," Grixtok insisted. "It will not happen again. This time we will be ready for their tricks." The Supreme Commander considered this. "Very well. You have authorization to deploy the Grand Fleet. But Admiral, if you fail again, do not bother returning home." Far across the galaxy, in the peaceful territories of the ethereal collective, Elder Whisper of Starlight floated in her meditation chamber. Her form shifted between solid and gas as she tried to understand what the humans had done. The ethereals were beings of pure thought and emotion. They could sense the feelings of other species across vast distances. During the battle at Kepler 442, Whisper of Starlight had felt something that disturbed her deeply. The Void Devourers, machines that should have had no emotions at all, had experienced something like confusion and fear. More troubling, the emotions had not come from the humans attacking them. They had come from the content the humans were broadcasting. They weaponized chaos itself, she whispered to herself. How is such a thing possible? Her aide, a younger, ethereal named Glow of Morning, appeared beside her. "Elder, the Council of Whispers wishes to know if we should attempt contact with the humans. Perhaps we can understand their methods." Whisper of Starlight's form became more solid as she focused. Her thoughts. "I have tried to touch the minds of the human commanders. What I found there..." She paused, her form flickering with uncertainty. "They think in ways that make no sense. Their thoughts are not organized like ours, or like any species we have encountered. They seem to create meaning from meaninglessness, find purpose in chaos. Is that why their attack worked?" "I believe so. The Void Devourers are ancient machines designed to process and understand all forms of organized information. But human consciousness is not organized. It is beautiful and terrifying chaos, and the machines could not process it." On Earth, President Nancy Wilson stood before cameras that would broadcast her words across the galaxy. The reporters in the room were mostly human, but several alien journalists had been allowed to attend. Their strange forms and curious devices made the scene look like something from a science fiction movie. "Madam President," said a human reporter, "can you explain how our military defeated the Void Devourers when the greatest powers in the galaxy failed?" Nancy Wilson was a small woman with gray hair and a grandmother's smile. She had been chosen as president partly because she looked harmless, which had proven very useful in dealing with alien diplomats who underestimated humans. "Well," she said, with a slight shrug, "we've been dealing with chaos and confusion for thousands of years on Earth. We're pretty good at it by now. I guess we just decided to share the experience." A Zephyrian journalist spoke up, their translator making their words sound musical. "President Wilson, our scientists cannot understand the technology you used. Will humanity share this knowledge with the Galactic Council?" Nancy's smile became a little less warm. "That's still being discussed. Right now we're focused on cleaning up the mess the Void Devourers made. We'll worry about other things later." "What about the Corvan Empire's threat to deploy their Grand Fleet against human forces?" asked another reporter. The president's expression became serious for the first time. "Admiral Grixtok is welcome to try whatever he thinks is best, but I would suggest he remember what happened to the last fleet that underestimated us. Back on Nexus Prime Station, Jake Morrison sat in his small office reviewing reports from Earth's military command. The door chimed, and Speaker Vexithala entered. The massive insect-like being had to duck to fit through the human-sized doorway. "Ambassador Morrison," she said, her voice carrying overtones of nervousness. "I hope you have time to speak." Jake gestured to a chair that had been specially made for alien visitors. "Of course, Speaker. What can I do for you?" "Your people have accomplished something remarkable," Vexithala said as she settled her insect form into the seat. "But they have also created new problems. The other species are frightened and confused. Some, like the Corvins, are angry." "I understand their feelings," Jake replied calmly. "Change is never easy." "Ambassador, I must ask directly, what are your people's intentions? Do you seek to dominate the galaxy as some fear?" Jake leaned back in his chair and considered the question. "Speaker, for 30 years, humanity has been the junior member of this council. We've been treated like children who should be grateful for being allowed to sit at the adult table. We've been polite about it because we were learning. And now? Now we've learned enough. The Void Devourers were a test, and we passed. But that doesn't mean we want to rule anyone. We just want to be taken seriously." Vexthala's large eyes reflected the room's lights as she studied Jake's face. "And if others refuse to take humanity seriously?" Jake's smile was polite but carried an edge that had not been there 30 years ago. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the Void Devourers did. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to make it someone else's problem." "I see," Vexthala said quietly. "And the Corvin Grand Fleet? What about it? They are mobilizing to attack your forces. Surely this concerns you." Jake checked his communicator and smiled. "Speaker, I just received a message from Admiral Carter. She wanted me to pass along her response to Admiral Grixtalk's threat." "What did she say?" She said, and I quote, "Let them come. We're just getting warmed up." The final battle began at the center of the galaxy, where ancient stars burned bright around a massive black hole. The Void Devourers had chosen this place to build their greatest weapon, a harvesting station the size of a small moon that could drain energy directly from the black hole itself. Every major fleet in the galaxy had gathered to watch from what they hoped was a safe distance. The Corvin Grand Fleet floated in perfect formation, 5,000 warships ready to support or fight the humans depending on how the battle went. Zephyrian science vessels recorded everything with sensors that could detect the smallest changes in space and time. Even the mysterious Phantom Syndicate had sent observers, their ships barely visible against the stars. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the enemy force through the main screen. The Void Devourer fleet was bigger than anything she had ever seen. Thousands of mechanical ships surrounded the harvesting station, their dark hulls reflecting no light. They had learned from their defeat at Kepler 442 and installed new systems to block human transmissions. "Admiral," reported Captain Tony Mitchell from his heavy cruiser Determination, "enemy forces are not responding to our chaos broadcasts. They've adapted." "I expected as much," Carter replied calmly. "These are ancient machines. They learn from their mistakes." Commander Sally Barnes, leading the Psychological Warfare Division, spoke up from her ship. "Ma'am, should we try the backup plan?" Carter smiled. "No, Sally. It's time for the real plan." She opened a channel to all human ships. "All vessels, this is Admiral Carter. Operation Absolutely Not is now active. Begin Phase 1. Across the human fleet, communication officers began broadcasting on every frequency the galaxy had ever used. But instead of the random chaos they had used before, they transmitted something far more dangerous: human arguments. Not just any arguments, but the special kind of pointless debates that humans had perfected over thousands of years. Whether cereal was soup, if a hot dog was a sandwich, the correct way to hang toilet paper, which way was the proper direction to load a dishwasher. The effect on the Void Devourers was immediate and unexpected. The ancient machines designed to process any kind of organized information encountered something they had never faced before: perfectly logical arguments that led to completely illogical conclusions. Dr. Kevin Brown, The fleet's xenopsychology expert watched his instruments with growing excitement. "Admiral, you need to see this. The Void Devourers aren't just confused. They're beginning to argue with each other." On the main screen, the impossible was happening. The perfect formation of the Void Devourer fleet began to break apart as individual ships turned toward each other instead of the human fleet. Mechanical voices that had been silent for millions of years began broadcasting on open channels. "Hot dog is clearly sandwich," transmitted one ancient AI in broken galactic standard. "Bread surrounds filling. Definition is obvious." "Negative," replied another machine voice. "Sandwich requires two separate pieces of bread. Hot dog uses single piece that is folded. This is not sandwich. Your logic is flawed." A third voice joined in. "By your definition, submarine sandwich is not sandwich because it uses single long bread." Carter watched in amazement as more Void Devourers joined the argument. Ships that had been working together for millions of years began forming sides in the great hot dog debate. Captain Helen Ross, commanding the experimental ship Phoenix, reported from the front lines. "Admiral, the harvesting station has stopped construction. Its control systems appear to be locked in an argument about whether pineapple belongs on pizza."
"And the main fleet?" Carter asked. "Splitting into factions," Ross replied with laughter in her voice. "I count at least 12 different argument groups. One entire squadron just broke off to debate whether a straw has one hole or two holes. Admiral E."
Grixtok, watching from his massive command ship, could not believe what he was seeing. The most dangerous force in galactic history was tearing itself apart over questions that had no answers. "What kind of warfare is this?" he demanded of his officers. Colonel Vector, equally confused, could only stare at the displays. "Sir, I think the humans have driven the Void Devourers insane. On the Zephyrian science vessel Enlightenment, Chief." Scientist Velandra frantically recorded data as her instruments detected something unprecedented. The Void Devourers were not just arguing. They were experiencing something like emotions for the first time in their existence. "This is impossible," she whispered to her team. "Machines cannot develop personalities." But that was exactly what was happening. Millions of years of perfect mechanical cooperation dissolved as each Void Devourer AI began to develop individual opinions about human debates. Some became passionate defenders of proper toilet paper hanging. Others dedicated themselves to proving that cereal was definitely soup. Dr. Brown, monitoring the psychological effects from his human ship, made an announcement that changed everything. "Admiral, I'm detecting something remarkable. The Void Devourers aren't just arguing, they're enjoying it." "Enjoying it?" Carter asked. "Yes, ma'am. These machines have been consuming civilizations for millions of years because they were bored. They were looking for something interesting, something new to process. We just gave them the most interesting thing in the universe. Pointless arguments that can never be resolved." The battle ended not with explosions or heroic sacrifice, but with the strangest surrender in galactic history. The lead Void Devourer AI, its voice now carrying what sounded like excitement, broadcast a message to the human fleet. "Human Admiral Carter," the mechanical voice said, "we request—" "What is human term?" "Asylum. We wish to continue these fascinating debates. Can discuss whether GIF is pronounced with hard or soft G sound." Carter looked around her bridge at her amazed crew, then activated her communicator. "Void Devourer Fleet, this is Admiral Carter. We accept your surrender. Welcome to the wonderful world of pointless human arguments. Fair warning though, we've been debating some of these questions for thousands of years without reaching conclusions." "Excellent," the AI replied with what might have been happiness. "We have time. We are immortal machines. Can debate forever." The massive harvesting station began transforming itself, its weapon systems retracting and new structures appearing. Within hours, it had become something the galaxy had never seen. A debate hall large enough to accommodate thousands of artificial intelligences who wanted to argue about human philosophy. Jake Morrison, watching the transformation from Nexus Prime Station, received a final report from Admiral Carter. The message was brief. "Threat neutralized. Void Devourers have agreed to become our debate partners instead of consuming the galaxy. They're actually pretty good at construction work when they're not trying to destroy everything. Invoice for A, Services will be sent to the Galactic Council. Also, we're keeping their ships for spare parts. Thanks for your patience. The aftermath was swift. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to grant humanity a permanent seat among the major powers, mostly because they were now slightly afraid of what humans might do if they got bored again. The Corvin Grand Fleet returned home without firing. A shot. Admiral Grixtok quietly requesting reassignment to a desk job where he would never have to deal with humans again. The former Void Devourers spread across the galaxy, their massive ships now painted in cheerful human colors. They helped rebuild the worlds they had damaged, all while engaging in passionate debates about whether water was wet, and if fish could be considered birds of the sea. Speaker Vexathala visited Jake one last time before he returned to Earth. Ambassador, I must ask, did your people plan this outcome from the beginning? Jake smiled as he packed his belongings. Speaker, humans have learned that the best way to solve an impossible problem is to make it irrelevant. The Void Devourers weren't evil, just bored. We gave them something better to do than destroying civilizations. And what will humanity do now that you have saved the galaxy? Jake paused at his door and looked back at the insect-like being who had become something like a friend over the years. Honestly, we'll probably find something else that needs fixing. That's what humans do. We see problems and we solve them, usually in ways that make everyone else nervous. He smiled one last time. But don't worry, Speaker. We'll try to give everyone fair warning next time we decide to handle things ourselves. The galaxy was safe. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and somewhere in the cosmic debate hall that used to be a weapon of mass destruction, ancient machines argued passionately about whether a hamburger was a sandwich while helping to rebuild the worlds they had once threatened to destroy.